Greetings, friends around the world. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy Channel. Have you heard what started coming out of Germany, July 13th, 2016? That Germany is now ready to lead militarily Europe and perhaps the world? As incredible as that may sound to many, seeing what happened to Germany after World War II, the German defense minister presented a paper. They got approved by the German cabinet. I'd like to read something from the German press about this. This is a quote. "Germany is ready to lead," end quote. German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen has said that she presented the so-called white paper on security policy on the 13th of July that was approved by the cabinet of Germany. Germany is increasingly seen as a key player in Europe, the document says. Accordingly, Germany is now ready to accept responsibility and help meet current and future security and humanitarian challenges. The country has a responsibility to actively help shape the world order. Now, this is a paradigm shift for Germany. For decades, post-World War II Germany has been basically an economic giant, but according to the German press, a political dwarf. It's long refrained from sending troops anywhere. It wasn't until 1994 that the German court even allowed Germany to send troops in multinational peacekeeping missions and that kind of a thing. The world, it says, expects Germany to take greater foreign and security policy role. And that demands a turnaround, the defense minister of Germany said. The Bundeswehr, which is the German military, now set to have its budget boosted. It's going to have its first increase in troop strength since it was a conscript army in the Cold War. The plans call for recruiting 20,000 additional personnel over 7 years. The Defense Ministry's plans stress that Germany will act within transatlantic and European frameworks. Here's something else about it. Now, what I was reading was from a German source, and I like to read from Reuters. Germany and France want to forge closer defense cooperation in the European Union following the departure of Britain, which has paralyzed such initiatives in the past, German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen said on the 13th of July. She said that France and Germany would lead talks with other nations to assess their appetite for common projects with a long-term aim of moving toward a common security and a defense union. I can tell you from experience that in the past, Berlin has said it would not do these things. But Britain has said it would not do these things. Would not do these things. So it was Britain that was getting in the way before. Then she says, this paralyzed the European Union on issues of foreign and security policy. This cannot mean that we have to remain inactive. We have to move forward. Now, of course, everybody in Germany doesn't agree with this. The German Left Party said this white paper presentation of what was approved by the cabinet in Germany is a white paper for armaments in war. Whether or not all approved, the reality is Germany's going to increase its military. Germany in the past has gone out and said it needs a military that is independent of that of the United States. A couple of months ago, the defense minister said that new troops she was asking for would be, quote, trained in cyber warfare and other technologically demanding areas of modern war. Germany is moving to upgrade its military. Bundeswehr, I'm reading this is from Wikipedia a couple of years ago, is among the world's most technologically advanced and best supplied militaries. Now it's divided into the military part, the armed forces, and the civil part, which administers it. And the military part, the federal force includes the Heer, which is the Army, Marine, which is Navy, Luftwaffe, which is the Air Force, Streitkräftenbasis, Joint Support Services, sorry about my non-German, and Zentraler Centraldienst, which is the Joint Medical Services Branch. As of late 2015, there were about 178,000 active soldiers in this German army, put it among the 30 largest military forces in the world, making it the second largest in the European Union to France. It's also got about 40,000 trained reserve personnel, with the German military expenditures at 34.4 billion. The Bundeswehr is among the top 10 best funded forces in the world, and it's going to be increased. At least that's the plan. Well, the Bible tells of a time when the final beast power is going to rise up in Europe. The beast of the sea, as this is called in Revelation 13, 1 through 10, also called the king of the north in Daniel 11, 39, 40. Now, other scriptures, such as Isaiah 10, verse 12, say the king of the north is going to be an Assyrian power or leader, thus possessing at least some Germanic, Central European ancestry. Now that the Brits have decided they're going to leave the European Union, they were the obstacle apparently for this joint military they wanted to have. Now they're going to work on this. Now the Bible warns about this. Now a lot of you will say, Germans, they're really peaceful. They don't really want to do anything. Well, again, World War I, World War II in the 20th century should perhaps get people to consider. What does the Bible say about the end-time Assyrians? Isaiah chapter 10, I'm going to start reading in verse 5 from the New King James Version of the Bible. O Assyrian, the rod of my anger, and the staff in their hand is mine indignation. I will send him against a hypocritical nation. Oh, this is Old King James. And against the people of thy wrath, my wrath, I will give him charge to take the spoil, and to take the prey, and to tread them down like the mire of the streets. Howbeit, he meaneth not so, neither does his heart think so, but it's in his heart to destroy and cut off nations, not a few. So again, we see somebody who says, doesn't look like they really wanted to do this, but when it comes down to it, they're going to want to do that. And we find out, going down to verse 11, shall I not do as I've done to Samaria and her idols, and do to Jerusalem and her idols? And I'd like to read verse 12 from the New King James of Isaiah 10. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Lord has performed all his work on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, that he will say, I will punish the fruit of the arrogant heart of the king of Assyria, and the glory of his haughty looks. Verse 13, for he says, by the strength of my hand I've done this, and by my wisdom, for I am prudent. I'm kind of like the master race, he says. And I've removed the boundaries of the people and robbed them of their treasures. So I have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. So basically, I'm going to say he did it all on his own, and he's a great one. Now in Daniel chapter 11, verse 39, I'd like to read this. We read about this king. He's the king of the north here. It says, thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god. This is the king of the north going against the strongest fortresses, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. Well, who has the strongest fortresses in the 21st century? Well, that would be the United States. Now, a lot of people don't think this is possible, but let's look at something from Revelation. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3. And I saw one of his heads, as had been mortally wounded, and the deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. Well, Germany lost World War I, and it lost World War II. And I'm not saying that's the full fulfillment of this, but it's interesting to keep that in mind. Now notice the verse that comes next. Revelation 13, verse 4. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who's like the beast who's able to make war with him? Notice that the beast of Revelation 13 has military ability. And consider that Germany now wants to take the lead in terms of this. Now this idea that Germany would rise up is not new to the Church of God. Back in 1959, the old radio Church of God says, here's something from the late Herbert W. Armstrong. I've been telling you all along that Russia's not going to plunge us in World War III now. Russia's not going to attack the United States. I've been telling you, even though we look on Germany as an ally, that Germany is a nation to watch. So back in 1959, he wrote, Germany is a nation to watch, and now we're seeing it rise up. And I'd like to read something from 1962 from the old Radio Church of God by the late evangelist Dr. Herman Hay. It says, consider also that Germany has set itself up as the bulwarks of European civilization for well over 1,000 years. The German Reich long endured as the oldest political institution in Europe. German leaders and philosophers have never forgotten this notion of the Middle Ages that the Germans have a special mission from God in their view. German politicians know that their dream of a world empire can only be created if they maintain and claim this world mission. There are moves for a German government toward a United States of Europe. German leaders, once again, just like in centuries past, are openly attempting to unite all of Europe into a United States of Europe, and through Europe to reshape the world and make it in order to fasten German leadership and culture on all nations and peoples. So this is back in 1962. Now back years ago, I was asked some questions about this. For example, let me read an email I received. How is Europe, Germany in particular, going to defeat the US, Britain, Canada, etc. with the weapons they now have? I don't doubt it'll happen, but in your opinion, I'd like to know how. Other than France, does any country in Europe have nuclear weapons? Well, we don't know all the details. Well, Jesus told his followers to watch in Mark 13:3-37, and I think this includes looking at world events in the light of biblical prophecy. I will comment that the Europeans do have something called the Large Hadron Collider. This is the world's biggest physics project. They're looking at things like antimatter and all kinds of things, and I believe at some point in time we might see some unique military spin-offs from that. Starting in 2013, the Europeans started on something called Galileo to give them their own, basically, GPS system. And I warned back in 2009 that the United States might decide to rely on Europe's Galileo system for part of its military defense. When I wrote that, the United States Air Force denied that that was a possibility. But about a year after I wrote that, the United States announced that, lo and behold, it was going to rely on Europe's Galileo system for part of the U.S. military's defense, which will give a European power, such as Germany and others who will be allied with it, a unique capability to affect communications in war. As far as nuclear weapons, the United States actually has nuclear weapons in the Netherlands, Germany, and elsewhere, and they're under European control. They already have them. The United States and the United Kingdom are reducing their own arsenal of nuclear weapons. And the U.S. has said it's going to buy less new advanced weaponry because of budget reasons. Europeans have said they're going to increase their military spending. And the Bible tells of a time when the king of the north is going to make a deal with the king of the south in order to destroy the end-time descendants of Israel. And so they're going to have allies that are going to help them do this. You know, the Europeans, the Germans have tended to use surprise in the past, like blitzkrieg. And so I would not be surprised that under the guise of, let's say, a NATO exercise, the Europeans could have planes and troops coming over to the United States, all seemingly perfectly fine, and then ended up not being that way. Now, Jesus warned about something called the beginning of sorrows, and he talked about natural disasters, economic problems, other woes, pestilences, diseases, whatever, troubles that would hit prior to the start of the Great Tribulation. The United States is subject to being weakened by those. The United States also has a lot of debt, and without going through this, the book of Habakkuk in chapter 2 talks about in the end time that something was going to happen to the highly indebted. They're going to be taken over. So there's a lot of reasons that this can happen. Now, it's not going to happen this week. It's not going to happen next week. But we are seeing the stage being set. Even in Poland, a country that was taken over by Germany, we've actually seen calls for German leadership. I'd like to read something related to Lech Walesa. He was probably Poland's most famous leader in the late 20th century. He's a former president. And he called for German leadership of Europe if the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. Now, this article came out a week before that vote. It says, Poland's freedom icon Lech Walesa believes powerhouse Germany should lead either a deeply reformed or an entirely rebuilt European Union in the wake of a possible Brexit. Germany in particular, he said, must calculate what would be better for the development of the EU. Do we need a completely new organization, or do we fix it? It's up to the Germans to decide, because they are the leaders, and they must decide whom they want to build the new EU, he added. And this guy also, Lech Walesa, got the Nobel Peace Prize. He was renowned for negotiating the bloodless end of communism in Poland in 1989. He insisted that Germany, along with EU partners France and Italy, quote, should have a contingency scenario prepared to put in place 15 minutes after the EU falls apart. After the current European Union falls apart, a new union must be created. It must be thought out in much better order in order to avoid the problems we now have. Whoever wants to join it can join, while whoever doesn't can say no thanks, he said. So he's calling on Germany to lead. We've seen after the Brexit vote, we've seen Germany going out and saying that they do need to lead, or they want to lead economically. According to the Bible, this is going to happen. The European King of the North is going to rise up. This beast of the Mediterranean Sea region, which what the whole old Roman Empire, old Holy Roman Empire would sometimes go down to, is going to rise up. And it's going to be a military power. And while people don't like to think it's possible, yes, it will defeat the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and any other close allies that they will have. Now, many people don't want to believe it, but if you just pay attention to the Bible and pay attention to the news, you'll see that world events are lining up for this. That's why we need to believe this book and understand world events in view of it, because through this, we know what is going to come to pass. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible and Prophecy channel.